Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 24th Bennington Select Board meeting. It's lovely to see all of you. I'm Jeannie Jenkins. I have the pleasure of chairing this board. I'm going to ask my fellow board members to introduce themselves, starting with Gary.
Hi, I'm Gary Corey.
Hi, I'm Jean Connor.
Hi, Tom Haley.
Hi, Sarah Perrin.
I'm Ed Woods.
Excellent. And also with us tonight, we have Stu Hurd, who's our town manager. We have Nancy Lively, who takes excellent minutes every meeting. We have Jonas Spivak on the computer. And we have Josh Boucher on the camera for Cat TV, which we very much appreciate. So we'll start off as we always do. Well, I guess first, let me give a reminder. We are a large room with poor acoustics, as many of you know. If you have difficulty hearing, please move up to the front. It's much easier to hear up here. There is one set of headphones if you would like to use those, and it looks like they are in use, which is excellent. Okay, so we'll start as we usually do with the Pledge of Allegiance. Gary, you're going to lead us in that.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Gary. And Tom, would you read our vision statement that guides our work?
Happy to. Bennington is a welcoming, engaged, inclusive, resilient community where everyone, regardless of identity, shares in our vitality and benefits from an outstanding quality of life.
Thank you very much. Next up is the consent agenda, which is the minutes of April 10th, warrants, and an updated liquor and tobacco license list, which is quite robust. For the purposes of discussion, could I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion for Stu, Nancy, et cetera? No?
Wasn't there an updated?
Yes, there's an updated.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that.
Yes.
There's an
So
updated list that was emailed.
There's an updated liquor and tobacco license list, yes. All right. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, great, super. All right, so next up is public comment. Has everyone signed up that wishes to speak on items not on the agenda? Yes? Okay, good. So I just want to remind you that the purpose is to share information that's useful to all. It's not a time for discussion, but for the board to hear from the public. We do want you to get answers, so we may direct you to sources that will help you get answers. And I will say we're going to keep it to 3 minutes tonight. I'm going to be the mean timekeeper, and because we want to make sure that we have plenty of time for the Ben High discussion. And when you finish speaking, please sit down, and then if there is any follow-up that we can give you, we will do that at that time. So let's see. First up, BBC, Bill Clark.
Hi, my name is Bill Clark. I'm an employee of BBC, which is Better Bennington Corporation. There's been some inquiry that's came even to our office about the downtown, about the benches and barrels, and when they will be put out. So just to let the public know, today, with the help of the town highway, we have gotten all the benches in place throughout the downtown, so feel free to use them. The benches, I anticipate, due to the weather, because I've got to maintain them outdoors and get them all painted, within the next week and a half, 2 weeks tops, the benches will be out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next comment is on Ben High, so we'll skip that and hold it until we get to that agenda item. Next up is the Bennington Free Library updates with Carson Keisinger.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for allowing me 3 minutes. My name is Carson Keisinger. I am a resident of Bennington, and I am also the Reference and Adult Services Librarian at the Bennington Free Library. I'm here to share briefly Some recent, current, and upcoming library activities. Last week, children and families got crafty during Earth Week and created original artwork from recycled library materials. Also during the week, the library accepted donations of extra craft supplies and held its first Earth Day craft supply swap, April 22nd. We had 53 people donate and 64 people shopped, so it was a great first year of recycling extra craft supplies. The library also collaborated with Climate Advocates Bennington to host their Climate Conversation Saturday. 36 people attended that program. Mainly, I'm here to wish you all a very happy National Library Week. It's a time to celebrate libraries, library workers, their contributions, and to promote library use and support. The theme this year is There's More to the Story, which is definitely true at Bennington Free Library. We are asking the community to participate in a survey, which you can find online on our website that will help us improve services. You can also find it through our Facebook page, through a QR code. You will see it in an advertisement in the Bennington banner. And there are paper copies available at the library. Everything that I'm holding up, I have extra copies I will leave on the table. Okay, thank you. Responses are anonymous, but if you give us contact info, you can win some prizes. This Saturday, April 29th, we are pleased to collaborate with the Ethiopian Community Development Council to host Stories from Around the World. That's ECDC. It's a chance to learn more about refugees and resettlement, to hear from refugees and volunteers, and enjoy some Afghan food and children's activities. The Children's Room will host Welcome Friends Mondays, beginning May 1st and May 8th. It's a Spanish and English story time. We are also part of the statewide Fair Housing Tour, which is coming May 5th. Oh, I don't have that one ready to go. Anyway, it's a fair housing tour with a housing survey table in which people can learn more about resources for housing. That's Friday, May 5th from 1:30 to 4:30. Saturday, May 6th, Pollinator Pathways and Native Plant Gardens. That is May 6th at 2 with a local botanist. And we are continuing to collaborate with the Bennington Museum to host Museum ABCs for children's ages 3 to 5. That is a time for them and their caregivers. The theme is We Are Water Protectors. It's also a trail tale, so you get to read the story while you walk along the George Aiken Wildflower Trail. Check it out, it'll be up for a while. Last but not least, I will be in trouble if I do not promote the spring book sale. Saturday, May 27th during Mayfest from 10 to 4. More information is on the website. You can call us if you want to get our monthly email bulletin. Let us know. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Carson, and you did that in 3 minutes. I'm impressed. Wow. That's good. Thank you. All right, up next is Jack Rossiter-Munley to talk about ECDC and Community Cafe.
Hello, I'm Jack Rossiter-Munley. I'm from here in Bennington, and as Jeannie said, I have two purposes. The first is that I'm here in my professional capacity as a refugee resettlement case manager for ECDC, which is the refugee resettlement agency that operates here in southern Vermont. And we have a couple of community activities and events coming up. The first is, as Carson mentioned, in partnership with the library, the Stories from Around the World event. There will be our program up in the Rotary Room, and there will be activities in the children's area. So it's an intergenerational opportunity for people to learn about Afghan culture, enjoy Afghan food, and also to hear about the real successes that have already come from refugee resettlement here in Bennington. If you come to that program, or if you just hear about it and think, wow, I want to know more about refugee resettlement, this sounds really intriguing, you're in luck, because that's at Saturday at 2 p.m. On Sunday at 2 p.m., I will be giving a Talk of the Times talk that will be at the UUFB, Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Bennington Meeting House at 108 School Street, and that is an event co-sponsored by UUFB and AAUW. So you will be seeing more about both of those events, I'm sure, around town in the coming week, but they are both efforts from us at ECDC to share what refugee resettlement means for Bennington and all of the great opportunities that have already come from the resettlement efforts locally. Now, the second purpose is I'm here in my personal capacity as one of the organizers of the Bennington Community Cafe. We are open from 1:30 to 3 every week outside of GBIX at 121 Depot Street, and we have food, beverages, an assortment of other essentials and spring clothing, that are available as a menu that anyone can order off of, and everything is pay what you wish. That includes paying nothing at all. A number of select board members have stopped by to check out the cafe, which I'm very thankful for. I like coming and stopping by and seeing you all at work here, so I appreciate you coming over to the cafe as well. And this last week at the cafe was really exceptional, and that's kind of what I wanted to share just a little bit about, which is it was by far the most people we've ever had at the cafe. We have added in some art elements at the cafe. We've been putting paper down on the tables and have had art supplies available that people have used and made art with, in addition to enjoying the food. And for the first time ever, we were completely out of all food and drinks at the end of the cafe, and it was incredibly busy and incredibly joyful. So if you are interested in volunteering or contributing as a baker, a cook, or during a cafe session, taking orders, filling orders, we would love to have you be a part of it. You can email us at benningtoncommunitycafe@gmail.com, or you can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Bennington Community Cafe, and we also have an online sign-up link that you can find on our Facebook page. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack. All right, let's see. Next up is Sam Rustino on the Leadership Summit. Clarification, maybe?
Yes, good evening. Sam Rustino from Bennington, Vermont. A few meetings ago, somebody brought up the question about there was a big leadership summit at Bennington College, and I had the same question too. Why wasn't it open to the public or enough airtime? It was out to the public on the 16th, and Monday morning, bright and early, they went for 8 hours discussing problems with, or issues with Bennington, and it was basically with the Vermont State Police and the Division of Safety, and Bennington County was targeted as the reduction of safety and violent reduction. You had numerous leaders, legislators, police departments, agencies from abroad to brainstorm on how to reduce the violence and reduction in Bennington County and Bennington. And the project was, after that, was labeled Project Alliance. I just also found out that there's a housing committee that we have formed. Zach Hale superseded that as well, and numerous agencies along with the Sheriff's Department, the County Coalition of the Homeless, and other partnerships into partnering with this reduction of violent reduction. To continue on, we've got, going into the next month, I'm happy to report that Hemmings Motor News is going to be continuing their Thursday nights with the car cruise. Most of you enjoyed that last year. This year it's going to happen again, and you have to get the word out early because car enthusiasts plan their trips. So if you don't get it out before Easter, they're not going to make stops here in Bennington, and last year people drove 3 hours to get here to Bennington. It's the only car show we have down on Main Street. Other than that, there will be matters I'll be commenting on the agenda items. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sam. All right, next up is Kelly Carroll, talk about Riverwalk Earth Day.
Hi, Kelly Carroll, Bennington. I just wanted to thank everyone that came out on Saturday for the Earth Day Walloomsac Riverwalk. We normally have it the third Saturday of the month, but we moved it to the fourth Saturday because it was Earth Day. There are a couple of people here, like Jean Connor, Sarah Perrin, Jack Hurley. So I just want to make sure to say thank you to everybody. And for those of you who do walk around and see the Riverwalk, if you're walking down North Street and you're looking over the bridge towards the Bennington Brush Company, you will now notice that obnoxious green tub is gone. If you're over by Anytime Fitness and you look down in the crevice down there, you're going to notice that there's some weight equipment that's been removed. There's been a lot of other trash. There's been a TV and a tire, excuse me, that was removed. Jack gave me a mild heart attack going down the bank to try to get stuff, but we really picked up about 8 bags of trash. And I just want to thank everybody that participated. Michael Nigro took all of the trash items up to the transfer station. The town donated the bags, the gloves, and the sanitizer. People donated their time. The Interfaith Council organized it with the walk committee. Corey Cregan is the state forester. He went and he talked about some of the trees and some invasive species and concerns. And then Rich Jorgensen handed out some free seeds for vegetables and flowers. So it was a really great Earth Day. I wanted to say thank you and encourage everybody to do Green Up on May 6th. So have a great night.
Thanks, Kelly. All right, let's see. And Nancy White on contracts.
Nancy White, Bennington. I have 2 items I'm requesting you put on your agenda next month. The first is a public discussion about your decision to call the Town Rec Center a community center. It is the UCS building that has a Bennington County Community Center in it. It is not our Town Rec Center. And the public needs to understand that I believe you're calling the rec center a community center to generate grants. The problem is those grants aren't coming to our town budget, and they should be. That's the first request. The second request, a public discussion on the agreement that you have with the Berkshire YMCA. No one is questioning the work the Y is doing. What we should be questioning is why you are the ones that approved the agreement over 3.5 years ago, and you have never followed the agreement. I have raised concerns about this for 2 years. I have asked why the Y is not turning the money over to the town office that they've been taking in at the rec center and pool as we were promised they would. Stu explained why this had to happen, and there were real reasons that it should be happening. The agreement ended in October. I asked Stu for a copy of the new one. He handed me something for Catamount. I asked that the new agreement be posted on the town website. The last time I checked, the old one is on there. We are paying a lot of money for the Y to be in Bennington. They're keeping the money from the pool and the rec center, and they're getting grants. You have got to be accountable for the people of this town about what is actually happening with this money.
Thank you, Nancy. All right, that concludes public comment. All right, so next up is the Ben High project presentation, and we have at least Dan Monk, Shannon Barsati, Zach Hill, John Hill, and Goldstone Architects, yes? So, great. So this is a chance for everyone to get all their questions answered. So after the presentation, we'll move into a public discussion period.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming this evening. I am Dan Monks. I'm the Assistant Town Manager. And first of all, I want to introduce, Jeannie did a quick introduction, but I want to introduce the team that's working on this project. I have John Hale from Hale Resources right up front here. Shannon Barsati is our Community Development Director. Zach Hale from Hale Resources is right there. And then we have the 2 architects from Goldstone Architecture, Jack Beyer and Jeff Goldstone. So these folks have been working with us every step of the way, and we're very thankful for all the efforts of this partnership that we've accomplished with this partnership so far. This is the third public presentation that regarding Ben High that the staff has given with Hale Resources since the Select Board authorized the staff to begin this process and try to make this project move forward. There were lots of discussions before that, but since the Select Board said go, this is the third presentation this evening. And we will be attempting this evening to articulate exactly how we see this project unfolding, all the bits and pieces of it, and that is our goal tonight, to make sure that we clearly articulate to folks. It is an information-only meeting this evening. The Select Board has the night off. They don't have to make any decisions tonight. They just have to listen and ask questions if they want to, just like everybody else. So we're here to present information. We do ask that folks limit their engagement this evening to questions. The board will be taking comments at the next meeting on May 22nd, when they will be having to make a decision. Obviously, we're not going to stop you from making a comment, but we'd hope to use this time for you to ask questions to the folks that are here so that you can have the information necessary to make your own conclusions about this project. So we're going to try to limit questions to 3 minutes. Once we get through everybody, we can go back around if people have follow-up comments, and we'll make sure that everybody has plenty of time to ask their questions. But we'd ask that folks limit their initial questions to 3 minutes, and then we can follow back up once everybody gets through. Next slide. So just a quick summary of what we're going to try to accomplish tonight in our project update. We're going to talk about the background of this project and our scope and vision for it. We'll talk about how the proposed ownership structure will be for this project moving forward, and the all-important funding question. And then we'll open it up to questions in the end. So I'm going to turn it over to Shannon to talk about most of the scope and vision stuff and looking at floor plans and elevations, all the fun stuff. And I'll be back to talk about the money stuff, which is the boring stuff. But Shannon, go ahead.
All right. Thanks for giving me the fun stuff, Dan. Okay, so the property background. We're talking about the former Bennington High School and middle school or junior high, located at 650 Main Street and consisting of approximately 100,000 square feet of space on 2.29 acres.
Shannon, you're going to need to speak up.
Okay, I'll try to get closer to the mic too. And talk loudly. Okay, so the vision, which we've talked about this before, but just to give you an update, is that this is a public-private partnership made up of the town of Bennington and Hale Resources as the developer of the building. The town space is 27,000 square feet, approximately 14,000 square feet for the senior center and Meals on Wheels, and 13,000 square feet of space for the gym, exercise and activity rooms, locker rooms, and changing rooms. The residential space is the majority of the building, 70,000 square feet. It's a mix of both market rate and affordable rental housing. The new part of the project that we haven't yet discussed is a proposed childcare facility that would be managed by the YMCA. And then as well as 22 market rate apartments, 15 permanently affordable apartments, and what we're calling the office space, which is the 3,000 square feet of space in the former shop rooms on the Pleasant Street side. So this is an aerial view of now as-is conditions of Ben High, and the really cool rendering of what it could be when it's completed. So just to look at some of these aspects that don't exist now, I think primarily, let's see here. Oh, okay, cool. I got a pointer. Okay, so right now, this is essentially an asphalt courtyard, okay? So this would be adding additional green space and a new entrance. There would still be the entrance that exists, the current entrance that exists here, but there would be a covered walkway so that, as you can see in this rendering, there's a wheelchair. This is a handicap accessible entrance, but this will also be handicap accessible with the creation of a ramp going into what will become kind of the main lobby for the facility. And then this is a drop-off area for the childcare facility, which will be, the entrance will be here. And then these are the reserved spaces for folks using the senior programs. This is going to be a bus drop-off location with kind of a bulb out here where people can wait for the bus or get dropped off for the bus. And then over here is a patio for some outdoor dining, since this is going to be the main dining area for the Meals on Wheels program. So these elevations are the exterior elevations on all the different sides of the building. And this entire project, an important piece of this is that the building is on the National Register of Historic Places. So it's eligible for both state and federal historic tax credits. And therefore, there's quite a rigorous process that you have to adhere to be able to get those tax credits. And that means that the building has to be renovated in keeping with its historic use as a school. So the main changes that you see are really the covered walkways that I showed on the other rendering, as well as some additional windows here to the current auditorium, and that's really just going to allow more natural light here, since this is all south-facing. So it's just going to bring a lot of light into that space. And then on the back side, the Pleasant Street side here, these windows will be replaced, and there'll be a few windows added for, again, more natural light into the housing area above. This is going to be the affordable housing area. And then these are also some new windows on this side. But the main, all of this area will be, again, wooden windows restored or replaced to really look like the originals. If you want to go to the next one. So this is an up-close rendering of that drop-off area, just showing, an active community space with having some landscaping and a courtyard that can add a lot to the area that is all asphalt right now. And the name being the Ben High Community Center. So that's just coming further back from Main Street, seeing some bike racks here in front of the old school, and really just, enlivening the conditions, as well as the condition of the parking lot. If you want to go to the next one. And this is coming from standing east, looking west, showing that area of the bus drop-off and the parking lot improvements. So all of this material, thanks to Jonah, is now on the town's website. So you can look in more detail at all the floor plans and the renderings. You're not going to be able to see a lot of detail here, but just to show you what these are, this is the ground floor where the new childcare facility will be located, and I'll have an up-close version of that soon. If you want to go to the next one, this is the first floor, so that includes the town spaces, the senior center, Meals on Wheels, the dining area, the gymnasium, exercise, fitness rooms, locker changing rooms here. These are the office spaces that were mentioned earlier, and then all of the residential area for the market rate housing, as well as what was the former library in the school, which will be a lounge kind of meeting room, mostly used for tenants of the building. And then the second floor, more market rate housing above in the older section of the building. And then these are the affordable units here that are above on the newer section of the building. So the town space, again, this is about 14,000 square feet of all senior-based programming. Just to give you some context, our current building that houses the senior center and the Meals on Wheels programs is about 5,000 square feet. So that is an exponentially greater amount of space for senior programming. And then another 13,000 square feet of town recreation space that's going to be managed by the YMCA. And then these are the office areas. This would be the Council on Aging space, and then the UVM Extension office and meeting rooms. And then here's a more up-close view of that design of the childcare space. So this is the courtyard that we showed earlier. This is the entrance. You can see this is the area beneath the gymnasium. So you're coming in at ground level, coming down some stairs here, and then there's a parent drop-off and reception area. And then all of the classrooms are going to be along this perimeter so that there's a lot of natural light. So this is a photo that shows the current condition of that space. You can see some of the old, I think this was the Spanish classroom, so there's some of the lettering is still up. And then this is a photo that it's not a rendering. This is an actual space of the Pittsfield Y, their childcare space, which is in a building also from the early 1900s that they've recently renovated, and it's in the ground level, otherwise known as a garden apartment in the city. So it is, at a lower level, but you have a lot of natural light. So we thought that was kind of cool that it was so similar to what the Ben High space would look like. And then these are some renderings of the residential spaces of the market rate apartments. The average size of the market rate units is about a little over 700 square feet, so they're sizable. And this shows some of the detail they're beautiful spaces with the large windows. You know, as part of historic preservation, you keep some of the details like the old chalkboards, and you really want to show the size and the scale of the room. So that's why some of this design includes the glass at the top here of where the bedroom will be. And then the non-market rate, the affordable units are also very sizable. In fact, they're a little bit larger at 800 square feet is the average size. And also very nice, you know, with a lot of southern light coming from that area above the auditorium. If you want to go to the next one. And then I think here I'm going to hand it back to Dan.
Thank you, Shannon. So let's see. So just to kind of give you some background about where we are currently with the status of the project, the current ownership and control of the building is the building is currently owned by Christopher Gilbert. However, the town has obtained site control of the property through an assignable long-term lease with a lease-to-own provision, and that lease can also be converted to a mortgage at the election of the town. So Chris still owns it. The town has a lease with the option to purchase, and could be converted to a mortgage. Next slide. So now let's talk about the proposed ownership and control, how we see this project rolling out. The short version is Hale Resources will purchase the entire building, and the town will lease the 27,000 square feet of town space, which includes the recreational space, the senior center and Meals on Wheels. So that's a short version. How that will happen, the town will assign its current lease an option to Hale Resources. Then they'll exercise that option to purchase the building, and that's how that will proceed. One detail that we want to clarify and make sure that everybody knows, part of the purchase price of Ben High includes the transfer of the current senior center on Pleasant Street to Chris Gilbert. So upon completion of the town space in Ben High, that transfer will occur, and the value of that property will be credited to the town to be put towards the tenant improvements in the town space. So that's how that will work. Specifics on the Hale Resources ownership model. The ownership of the building will be divided between two separate entities. They'll each be affiliated with Hale Resources. Entity number one will own the 15 affordable residential units, and entity number two will own the 22 market rate units, the town space, the office space, and the childcare space. So two essentially commercial condominiums, but two different entities will own two different spaces in Ben High. So Hale Resources will manage the entire building. It will be their building, and they will be managing it. And importantly, very importantly, Hale Resources will fund and construct the redevelopment of the entire building and site, including the town space. And as I mentioned, the town would then lease its 27,000 square feet from Hale Resources. That space will be constructed in accordance with the design approved by the town. The town will be responsible for installing its own furnishings and computer data systems as well as security systems in the space. But the rest of the building, anything that's essentially part of the building, will be built out by Hale Resources. The town will sublease a portion of that space, the town space, to Meals on Wheels, which will generate some income. And the town will, as we've discussed before, contract with the YMCA to manage the recreational space that the town will lease. A few more details on the town space lease. So the town will contribute $2 million of the construction costs for the town space. Just to put that in perspective, the construction costs for the town space is estimated at $8 million. So it's the Hale Resources folks will be responsible for funding the rest of that. Obviously, we're collaborating with them to find every tax credit and grant that we can, but the cash payment from the town for its space and for the entire building actually will be $2 million. That will be paid for exclusively from ARPA funds. It will be not any local taxpayer money. The initial term of the town space lease will be at least 20 years, and it should have multiple renewal terms. If it does not have renewal terms, there will be a capital investment reimbursement of all town funds invested in the town space. So all the money would come back to the town if for some reason we were not able to renew. The town's lease payment, and this is pretty remarkable actually that we were able to make this deal work at this level, but the town's lease payment will be $7.50 per square foot. And anybody who knows the commercial rental market in town knows that's significantly below market. We see rates anywhere from $13.50 to $25 per square foot. So this is a significantly reduced rate, and we're glad that we can make it happen at that price point. And then, as Shannon mentioned, Hale Resources is likely to rent the office space to UVM Extension and Council on Aging. Nothing signed yet, but that is the intention, and we hope to work with those folks to get those leases. But that will be a direct lease from Hale Resources, not with the town. Next, thanks. Joan is right with me, so thank you, Joan. So just some more details about the lease. Is very common stuff in lease documents, but the lease documents will articulate the shared use of the interior spaces, the shared use of the exterior facilities, including the drives and parking, and the shared use of utilities and such as fire suppression systems and other infrastructure, because obviously it's one big building and there'll be a lot of systems that are common to everyone, and the lease will certainly be very clear about how those systems are shared and paid for. As far as maintenance is concerned, the Hale Resources will be responsible for maintenance of the entire building, less the interior of the town space, which the town will be responsible for. So Hale Resources, for instance, would be responsible for roof maintenance and making sure that the building stays maintained on the exterior, et cetera. And the town will be responsible for cleaning and maintaining its interior space. As it's currently contemplated, it looks like the town will maintain the site, plowing, mowing, et cetera, unless it makes more sense to do that a different way. But we think that's probably the most cost-effective way to do that. So that's kind of the proposal for the maintenance. All right, and now to the money. How are we gonna pay for the? How is the town going to pay for the responsibilities that it has, and how is Hale Resources going to raise the $28 million necessary to construct this project, to complete this project? So we're going to start with the town costs, and in addition to the construction costs, which we talked about, there's going to be basically three major components to the town costs from this point forward. It's obviously the lease payment. We talked about that, and that we'll talk about how we expect to pay for that. In a future slide, there's going to be costs before we occupy the space, things like legal costs, continuing to pay the lease fee to Chris Gilbert until we close, minimal utility costs, et cetera. So those are all going to happen before occupancy, and those will be paid exclusively from ARPA funds. And we have a slide on that too we'll talk about. And then thirdly, as far as the town costs are concerned, there's going to be the ongoing operating costs once we take occupancy. So those are costs after occupancy that would be in addition to the lease payments. And then when I finish discussing the town's costs, Zach Hale's going to come up and talk about the much more complicated cost funding stack for the $28 million to be raised to develop this property. But I'm going to start with the more simple stuff, and then Zach can come up and talk about the complicated fundraising that they're doing. Next slide. So I'm going to call Shannon up to deal with this one because she did most of the work on working out how we're going to pay for the lease payments with our current budget allotments and some other funding sources. So Shannon, take that away.
Sure. Well, so we knew that we had the ARPA funds to put towards the fit up of our space, but the piece where we really had to dig in and look at our budget was understanding how we were going to pay for that lease payment. So the total space being rented by the town, including the senior center, the recreational space, and Meals on Wheels, is almost 27,000 square feet at $750 a square foot. So that total monthly rent is $16,521 or $1,252 annually. So when we started looking at our budget, we brought in the monthly rent that Meals on Wheels will pay the town as part of subletting their space, the current annual rent that the town is paying for recreational space, and we had discussions with Jess Rumlow, who's the executive director of the Berkshire Family YMCA, about what kind of savings from a reduced YMCA management agreement could we have just right up front when they had much more space to utilize for recreation. So with those included, as well as our existing recreational and senior center budget, we actually have no increase to the town budget for the monthly and annual lease payment using this formula. So that's really the important piece, is that there's not an increase to the budget going forward.
All right, then as I mentioned previously, there are going to be costs to the town between now and when we occupy the space, and we estimate those very conservatively at $275,000. That does include a 20% contingency as well, so we feel very good about this number. It will be covered 100% by ARPA funds, as I mentioned, but some of the costs that we were looking at, legal fees to negotiate the lease, design development for our space, furnishings, security system, and utilities, et cetera, between now and when we occupy the space. So these are one-time costs. They will not be recurring. They will happen prior to us occupying the space. And again, that will be 100% covered by ARPA funds, not by town local taxpayer money. All right, now, there will be some additional operating costs. We're going from a 5,000 square foot building to a 27,000 square foot building, so we have 22,000 additional square feet to maintain, so that's not free. But taking into account what we already budget for the senior center, which we can then transfer to the Ben High space, we anticipate, again, very conservatively, a total of $88,000 annually. That includes utilities, the education portion of taxes that will be due, and maintenance costs, additional maintenance costs from additional labor and materials costs. I will say that $37,000 number we expect to be significantly lower because Hale Resources will be using geothermal heating system, and we expect that number to decrease, but we wanted to be very conservative with all our numbers, so these are essentially a worst case scenario for what the additional annual operating costs would be. And one thing that's important to recognize, because we expect that the YMCA will generate significantly additional fees because of the additional space they have, we expect our management agreement to decrease very quickly over time. The way the management agreement works with the YMCA is if they generate income, that reduces the maintenance agreement. If they generate a grant, that reduces the cost of the maintenance agreement. So we have a maximum amount that we pay each year, and every year that we've had an agreement with them, they've been able to raise revenue and get grants to reduce that maximum amount. So we expect that to continue, and because of the additional space, we expect that reduction to cover most, if not all, of those additional operating costs. But we wanted to make sure that everyone knew this is the number that we expect to be additional, but we do expect offsetting revenue. So just a summary to kind of go over all those numbers. Hopefully they make sense. And again, we'll be taking questions, and we're happy to expand on any of that. As I mentioned, the overall project, the residential, the town, the office space, all of that, the construction costs, including soft costs, is $28 million. That's the latest estimate, and I've been told by Zach that he feels pretty good. That's pretty close to what it's going to be. We've been through several cost estimates and been refining, and I think that Hale Resources feels comfortable that that's the number, or at least close to it. Just to kind of expand on that, as I mentioned, the town's commitment to the project is $2 million. It will be used to fit up partial payment to fit up the town space, which, as we mentioned, is estimated at $8 million. The town's commitment for pre-development and fit-up costs is $500,000. That's the 275 that we mentioned in the previous slide, as well as funds we've already expended, rounded up with a generous contingency. But so that again is paid for through ARPA funds, both the $2 million for construction and the $500,000 in fit up and pre-development costs. That's ARPA funding. And then, as we discussed, the transfer of the former senior center building, we anticipate that to be about a $400,000 value. That will be credited to the town, and it also returns that property to the tax rolls, which is kind of a nice benefit. So the total all-in for the town is $2.5 million in ARPA funds and the value of the former senior center. So that's all for the construction and soft costs of the project. Then there's the town's base lease payment, which we discussed, which would be about $200,000. And as Shannon mentioned, we don't expect any increase in the town budget given the additional revenue sources that we see and the existing budgeted line items. And finally, as we mentioned on the previous slide, we anticipate the additional town space annual operating costs will be about $88,000. Again, we expect that to be reduced, if not eliminated, by a reduction in the YMCA agreement. And in case you're wondering, once we expend the $2.5 million in ARPA funding, we do have a balance of about $400,000 to $500,000 that can be used on other projects. Currently, as most of you know, the skate park has been identified as the highest priority after Ben High, so we would expect that these funds would be allocated to that project. However, that's a select board decision, but just wanted to let folks know that that's kind of the budget, the remaining budget that we have with ARPA after this project. So on to the more complicated stuff. Hale Resources, Zach Hale is going to come up and talk to you folks a little bit about the funding stack that they put together to get us to the $28 million that we need to renovate this building. And Zach's done a ton of work on this. I will tell you that he's worked tirelessly. He's probably 5 times faster than any other partner we've worked with in getting things done. So a credit to him, and you're up, Zach. Show us what you got.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. And thank you, Shannon and Dan, for that overview. Awesome stuff. And just want to give a shout out to Jeff and Jack from Goldstone Architect for those renderings and the layouts and everything. They've been awesome to work with. So,
Zach, you're going to have to speak up as well.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jeannie.
That's great, yes.
So this is the $28 million that we are looking to either pursue or we've been awarded or have committed. There's actually only several different funding sources on this list. So this one here, apply by, and let's see, we have this one here, apply by 6/1. There's one more somewhere else, intake eval 6/1. So only these 3 funding sources are things that we still need to apply for. Everything else is either if you do it, then you get it, or we have applications in. Some of them we've been awarded, and we're feeling really good about this. It seems like there's been several programs that have come out since we've even started this project, and they continue to close our gap as the cost has gone up. So there has been a pretty good rise in the cost, but that is because we're identifying everything more thoroughly, and just really the child care facility also added some cost to it too, but something very important that's needed, and we're really excited about it. So this is all the grants, about $8 million of grants coming into the project. This is for both of those owners that we mentioned. And then this is the tax credit equity. So those historic tax credits are here, about $4.7 million for those ones. And then there's this new 10% in Vermont loan program, which is a little over $5 million, which is the treasurer actually taking 10% of Vermont's cash on hand and making it available for low interest loans. A lot of this funding too, I'll just mention quickly, we're working with NeighborWorks of Western Vermont, and we expect them to be one of the owners in the project for a short period of time during some compliance period, and we're working with Heather Starzinski, who we feel really good about being able to serve that role. So I think that's pretty good for this one. We'll see if there's questions. Just wanted to throw this up there on the slide just to kind of show this is actually the more detailed version, and as you can see, there's all these different spaces, low-income housing tax credit. This is the non-affordable units, and then here is all of the office space, and then we have a lot of the community spaces actually all right here at the end here, these 4 spaces. So this is how the makeup is of that $8 million on these 4. So yeah. There's some more detailed stuff behind this too, so but we save that. So cool. Thank you.
So, and as I mentioned, if you have specific questions for Zach, you can try to stump him on some of those financial details, but it's pretty impressive what they've put together. I know that one of the topics that came up last time was the site plan and parking for the project, so we wanted to make sure to talk about that, give you the details on where we are. We did have a parking assessment parking needs assessment done by the Bennington County Regional Commission. Mark Andrews is the transportation planner there, and he's developed a preliminary report for us. We expect to finalize that this coming week, and we will post that online for everybody. The conclusions probably won't change. In fact, they won't change, but he wants to finalize the report and get it on the website so you can all see it. However, I can talk about the conclusions that have been reached on that needs assessment. So first, some background. The Ben High site will have 65 spaces on the site for the exclusive use of that building. So those have been designed and those will be constructed, and that will be the number on site. On street, within 400 feet, which is considered a comfortable walking distance by sidewalk, it's considered what's called a level of service A, according to the transportation speak, which means ideal. We have about 50 spaces in the vicinity right on Main Street, and virtually none of them are occupied on a regular basis. We know them when we look at this regularly. Mark Andrews observed no more than 4 or 5 of those spaces occupied at any one time. So those 50 spaces should be readily available for this property if they're needed. So I will say the parking study, actually we were very pleasantly surprised with the results of the parking study. It shows that sufficient parking is available most of the time simply on site. On those times that it's not available on site for those few peak hours, there's more than sufficient parking to be used to be available with the additional 50 spaces on Main Street. That being said, even if that is not sufficient, we do have the town does own land within 300 to 400 feet from here. Basically just east to the site and across the street in front of the Morgan Street Cemetery, where we can fit, we would never do this because it would take up the whole site, but we could fit up to 100 parking spaces, but we could easily fit 40 spaces on there and still conserve 50 to 60% of the green space. So we feel like we have plenty of parking in place with this on-site parking and the on-street parking. However, if for some reason demand far exceeds our expectations, which would actually frankly be awesome. If so many people were using this facility, we needed to install more parking. We can easily do that 300 feet away, and we can install, like I said, 40 to 50 spaces very easily. So we do feel that the parking is more than adequate, and we have a backup plan just in case our assessment is not correct. So we feel really good about the parking going into this project. I know that some folks we're concerned about that, but I think we've got that one cracked. Next slide. All right, so next steps before we take questions. May 22nd, that's when the select board will discuss this project again. There'll be public comment. We'll probably do a quick update to folks just if there's any new developments. And we would be requesting that the select board formally approve finalizing a development agreement with Hale Resources based on the terms that we've discussed today. We don't expect any of those to change materially. Those have been hammered out, and we feel good, and we have attorneys working on putting together a development agreement that we all feel good about. And that we'll want to make sure that the select board on the 22nd agrees that we should proceed to finalize that. Our goal is to be back on the 12th, if we get the green light from the select board on May 22nd, for the select board to review and approve the development agreement. Now, we may not be ready by the 12th, but that's our goal. We're setting that as our goal, but we're not promising that'll be done. But that's what we would like to do, is be able by June to have that development agreement at a point where the select board could say, town manager, go ahead and sign that. We're ready to proceed. So those are the next two, definitely the May 22nd, likely June 12th that are on the docket for this project. We do want to take your questions this evening. Importantly, though, I just want to point out, not only will we take questions this evening, when you have the whole team here, you can ask them in person, but you can also send us questions at info@benningtonvt.org, and we'll make sure that those get answered. And the good thing about sending those questions is then we can also put those answers up on the website so everybody can see them. And Jonah regularly updates those. We're also going to have, Jonah, is it a comment form? Is that what we're calling it?
There's a public comment form available on that page now.
Okay, so there is a public comment form. So if you have a comment that you want to share with the select board and the staff, that will be available as well. Anything else about the website, Jonah, that I missed?
Any additional information will be posted there as well.
Okay, yes. Oh, it's very important. So this entire presentation will be posted by tomorrow, I assume. And you'll have time you can look more closely at the renderings and the site plan and the floor plans, and also the very wordy sections on the financing and funding parts will all be there too. So if you can look. Oh, it's on there now. Okay. So you'll be able to look at that at your leisure. If you have any questions, you can email us, and we'll happily respond and make sure that we get that out to everybody, so everyone has the benefit of that if it's a question that we think folks would appreciate knowing. So with that, we'll take any questions that you have, and we'll ask that you come right up here. Let us know what your questions are. Ask you to limit it to 3 minutes, at least in the first round. We'll then make sure that the folks that are best suited to answer those questions come up to the podium and answer those questions. So I'll let Jeannie figure out who you want to call up here.
All right, I'll do that, and I'll be the mean timekeeper too. Let me ask first, is there anyone from the select board who has a question? Yes? Okay, Jean?
Well, first of all, can we ask design questions, or
Sure you can.
Okay.
That's why we have Jeff and Jackie.
Well, that's what I thought.
I told them they didn't have to present, but they had to be ready to answer questions.
Okay.
So if you had a design question,
Okay.
you got them right here, so let's ask them.
Okay. I think I know the answer, but I'm just going to ask it so it's out there and they have a chance to respond. When you were doing the description of where the child care center was, you said I think it was Shannon, there were stairs. There is a way to get down there without using stairs, correct? It's ADA compliant. Okay, thanks.
I can answer that question, yes.
Okay. I knew the answer. I just wanted it out there. Does anyone know a projected date? Let's just say everything goes smoothly and there's no big construction hiccups, when we would be able to occupy the building.
I'm going to let Zach guess on that one, because he's the one that's got to get all the money together and get the contractors in place.
Our goal is to start construction by the end of the year, and 18 months of construction will get us into the mid 2025, so June, July 2025.
Okay, great. Let's see. While I have the microphone.
Your 3 minutes are ticking, I'm just letting you know.
No, that's all. That's all. Thanks.
You were close. Okay.
I have a few.
Okay.
First off, the questions that we'll hear tonight, will those be also in written form, the answers to those questions?
We'll have minutes. We could certainly post the minutes on the website, sure.
Okay,
Yep.
great. And then the other question I had was, with Hale owning the building, then this building will stay on the tax rolls, the grand list, is that correct?
You are absolutely correct, and we should have mentioned that. That is a very important factor here. This building will stay on the tax rolls obviously for decades. It wasn't. It is currently at a very low rate. So the full market value of this property will be on the tax rolls, yes.
I have a couple other questions. The lease was for 20 years. It seems like a short period of time for something that we expect to use for forever.
Yep. So there's a reason for that. There's a funding source. Is that the historic preservation tax credits? It will only allow for a 20-year lease, but we are either going to have multiple renewable options that will be exercised at the discretion of the town, or I'll call it a penalty of repaying all of the town's invested funds would be triggered. Therefore, no landlord, even if it's somebody twice removed from the Hale Resources in 20 years, would ever want to pay back all that money. So we're essentially preserving our investment, making sure that there's no way that we'll lose that.
So that'll be laid out in the lease agreement?
Yes, that's going to be definitely that as part of the development agreement, and then very specific in the lease agreement as well. So yes, that's an important consideration. We've talked about it. The Hales understand it, and their attorney understands it, and so does ours. So we'll make sure that the town's fully protected as far as its investment of funds is concerned.
Okay. And then
I think Zach has some.
I just wanted to add that those rules for the historic preservation tax credits, they end after the 5 years too. So if after 5 years you wanted to sign a 99-year lease, that could happen at that point.
Okay.
Actually, that sounds like a better solution than, once we get that, we can just sign it we can get lots of renewal options. So all these little, so that as you're seeing, because we have, how many funding sources would you guess, Zach, in the order of 15 or so? 15-ish funding sources. Each one of them comes with their own conditions and rules and regulations, and we have to kind of thread the needle between all of those, and so we have to get creative on some of the things. But this is just one example of one of the hurdles we have to make sure we deal with appropriately so that the town's protected.
Am I going over?
No, you've got a minute. Go.
The question was just why would you have Hale Resources own the building? I think I know the answer, but why not the town own our section of the building?
Okay, so lots of different reasons. Number one is that it all stays on the tax rolls. That's not number one, but that is a benefit. Number two, and actually is the most important on my part, it means the Hales are responsible for all of the funding to get this done. It essentially takes the risk of ownership off of the town, and they willingly accepted it, transferred it over to the Hales so that they will be responsible for building maintenance. They'll be responsible for all the funding of the project. It essentially reduces the risk significantly to the town. In fact, this arrangement is virtually risk-free to the town because the $2 million that we've committed to the project won't be spent until this project's fully funded and bonded and ready to go to construction, and then we would be committed. So it's actually a remarkably good deal for the town from a risk perspective.
And as I understand it, the historic preservation tax credits can only go to a tax-paying entity. Is that
That's correct. So and I'm sure Zach would have come up here if I didn't mention it, but in order to leverage the tax credits, which account for anywhere from 30 to 50% of the project?
Yeah, it's like 13 million.
Yeah. So the tax credits have a potential value of $13 million, and unless Hale Resources is the owner of the building, we can't use those tax credits. We can't leverage those tax credits to put towards construction of the portion of the towns that the town's going to lease. So that's the financing part is a very important reason that the private ownership makes sense.
And my last question is, you talked about having two entities. What's the reason behind that?
I'll let Zach talk about that because I think the different funding sources require different entities, but Zach, can you answer that question?
So one entity will be a low-income housing tax credit condo, project, and the other one will have new market tax credits. And those are two funding sources that cannot be stacked. And so that is why the separation is the two different funding sources there.
Thank you.
Do you anticipate any interruption of the services from the senior center or Meals on Wheels during this process at all?
No, so we're working really hard. Obviously, we won't move folks over till the building's ready, but we're working very hard to compress the time period, and I know I've just had a conversation with Jack and Jeff. The only thing that will take some time that we can't really do ahead of time is moving all the equipment from the kitchen, from current Meals on Wheels space to the new space. And I know that Jeff and Jack are going to be working with the logistics person to make sure that that happens. We expect within a week or so. Is that what you're looking at?
As quickly as possible.
Yeah. So we're not going to promise, but as quickly as possible. They've had discussions with Meals on Wheels. They're aware that there will be a slight lag, and they've indicated that they can handle that for a very short period of time. So it will be a challenge. It will be a logistical challenge. We'll have to make sure we're very well coordinated, but we expect it to be fairly smooth transition.
Okay, and this will also add the Meals on Wheels building to the tax rolls as well, correct?
Yeah, so that's a good point. So the senior center, current Pleasant Street Senior Center building will immediately go onto the tax rolls, well, the next tax year, onto the tax rolls once it's transferred to Chris Gilbert, yes.
Sarah? Okay. All right, well, let's open the floor. Sam, come on up. 3 minutes.
Sam Rosino, Bennington, Vermont. I keep forgetting to toot my horn. For those of you that are on social media, I have a media page or Facebook page called Bennington, Vermont Town Community Info. I welcome for the conversations, the comments, and the discussions on this. My topic, actually my wording, my vocabulary is a universal locker room. Can you pull that site up, Jonah, to...
You have a question about universal locker room?
You can't? Okay. I just was going to sit there if you can pull up where the YMCA is, where the...
Sam, we just had, so if you could ask all your questions, I'm writing them down, and then we'll go through them all, and you can circle back.
Yes, I'm getting to that. Okay, I just thought it would be beneficial as I was talking to put...
You won't, Sam, you won't get through your questions if we have to go through the slides. So just go ahead and ask your questions.
Okay, I'm getting to it. I know the reason why we're going for this is because of the cost of plumbing. Other YMCAs don't have this situation. I strongly urge that we have separate bathrooms for ladies and gents, because the way the world is today, there are a lot of big question marks with kids and mental health, and that's out there. This building's got to be monitored. That's one question that's out here. The parking study for the overflow for 100 car spaces, is there any way that you're going to be doing a study as far as the cars going in and going out, because it's public, it's not specific to the Ben High project? Naturally, some people are going to be using that parking area as well near Safford Street. I don't even know where the curb cuts are going to be, but that's a busy corner. So that's another question that I have.
All right, let's bring that up, Jonah, just so we can... And I'm probably going to ask Jack to come up here, Jeff, to talk about the universal, but just what in that, so there are separate bathrooms, just to be clear. Every single bathroom, toilet room has a door, so they are separate bathrooms. So no, I don't want people to... Why does it say universal? Because there's not a separate room that's specific to males or females. There's individual toilet rooms are male or female depending upon who uses them, or non-binary. So every single toilet room will have a door, and every single shower room will have a door. And it's universal because it's not a men's room and a ladies' room, but they each will be individual bathrooms and toilet and shower facilities. And as far as what you're saying otherwise don't have this, it is the WISE intention to do this everywhere. This is kind of the new model for how we do bathrooms. So it's not.
I'm sorry, Sam. So you can come back around, but right
Yep.
now you've asked your questions. Dan will respond to them, and then if you have another question, once everyone's asked a question, you can come back up.
So it is a universal locker room in that anybody can go into the room, but every single bathroom facility, including the shower facilities, are completely separate. As far as parking spaces, it hasn't been determined whether or not the new lot, if necessary, would be strictly open to the public. It could be limited to the Ben High property if we thought it was necessary. But again, given the really huge surplus of parking that we see in the vicinity, even if we did build that space, it'd be pretty unlikely that we'd have to restrict it to make sure that we had sufficient parking for everybody. Like I said, if it was so busy we needed to build that, we would be really, really, really happy. So actually, I'm hoping that we have to build it because we're way busier than we expect.
I understand. Oh, you guys want? I just want one clarification. Please do.
Hi, Jeff Goldstone from Goldstone Architecture, and I just want to add to what Dan pointed out, that there also are separate changing rooms, also behind, each one behind its own closed door. And actually, one of the major discussion points for why this was a better solution than boys and a girls, a men and a women room, was that this allows for surveillance so that we can have both camera or personnel in the area that could walk around outside of all of these rooms to make sure that everything is safe and everybody knows where they're supposed to be.
Thanks,
Yes, Nancy.
I want to go over the money, but since Sam brought it up, I called the Berkshire Y in Pittsfield today. They just did a $12 million renovation on their building. They have 3 locker rooms, 1 male, 1 female, and I think they said the third was mixed gender. I called the North Adams Y. They have 3 locker rooms, 1 male, 1 female, 1 family. Bennington residents were blocked from having any say and participating about how that space was being split up at the Ben High. We should have had a say. But we've got a lot bigger problems than that. $300,000 a year this is going to cost us?
Nancy, could you, if you have
Okay.
a question, raise your
Sure.
questions, please.
Meals on Wheels, if I understood it correctly, it says we're paying for Meals on Wheels. We don't pay for Meals on Wheels now. They have, Southwestern Vermont Council on the Aging has always paid us rent to rent the downstairs of the building for Meals on Wheels, which is a county nonprofit.
Nancy, is your question, how is
Sure.
Meals on
Why would our
Wheels?
town suddenly start paying the rent for Meals on Wheels when they have paid us for 25 years? Second, you want us to pay the rent for the Y, for that recreation. The Y is going to be taking in and keeping all the money that people pay for gyms and programs. They have got to start paying some of their own space. So the cost last year at this time was 12 to 14 million. It's up to 28 million. What will the town be assessing the property for when it's complete? What will it be paying in taxes to the town? In addition to the 300,000, you said 275,000 pre-occupancy. Is that ARPA money? I saw something about taxes for education. Are you saying we have to pay education taxes? I haven't heard a word about the school system. If there's stuff going on for education, they had better get their budget involved. We're up to 2.5 million for ARPA. You're going to have a big problem when it comes to the senior building because you've totally changed the lease. A year ago, the public was told by town officials we were swapping the Ben High for the senior building. Our town was going to own the Ben High. Our town is not going to
Nancy, you
own...
have 30 seconds.
This is going to be the question. Our town is not going to own anything. The Bennington taxpayers do not owe a building to Chris Gilbert, a building that we've paid for that's worth probably $500,000. This means that Bennington residents will have 30 days to sign a petition to block you from using that under Vermont state law. So when are you going to give us enough notice so we can get together to get those signatures? That's what the agreement says.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Okay, I'll come back around because I got a ton of questions.
So I'll try to make sure I hit all of them. As far as Meals on Wheels is concerned, Meals on Wheels will continue to pay rent. Just want to make that very clear. We will not be paying Meals on Wheels rent. They will be paying rent to us, which is part of how we will be paying the rent to the Hales, is that sublease. And as far as the assessment of the property, I don't know what it will be assessed for. Zach, do you have a guesstimate on what it might be assessed for? Say between 5 and 8, maybe. Yeah.
A good example is the pond.
Yeah. So in this multi-million, 5 to 9 million maybe, but until it's done and until the market rate is assessed, we don't know. As we've seen with all downtown redevelopment throughout the state, the cost to renovate these buildings is astronomical, and the assessed value doesn't cover that construction cost, which is why the only way these things happen is with tax credits and grants and partnerships with public-private partnerships.
Could you mention what the final block was?
I don't know what the assessed value. It's probably $6 to $7 million. Do you know, Stuart, or is around that cost? Did it cost them about 20+ million to redevelop it? 30 million. Yep.
Yeah,
So
I think if you use, I use 28 million, 25% might be the assessed value.
Yep.
So if you look at 7 million at the current town tax rate, it will generate about $112,000 a year in taxes. If the current building is assessed somewhere in the $250,000 to $300,000 range, I don't remember exactly what it is, it's generating about $4,000 a year in taxes.
right. So from 4,000 to about 112,000 is the estimate for what would be the tax revenue. We did state specifically that the pre-occupancy, the $275,000 in pre-occupancy is ARPA money. It's not local taxpayer money. And yes, this property is subject to taxes, it's including the education tax. So the education tax will be paid. Let's see. As far as why the town won't be owning Ben High, it's because we won't be purchasing Ben High. The Hale Resources will be expending the purchase price to purchase the building. The town will not. So that's, any indication that we're somehow buying the building for the Hales, that is not accurate. Hale Resources will purchase the building with their funds, not town funds. And as, I don't remember, is there any?
YMCA. YMCA was the other question.
Will they keep the money?
So the way that it works, and it would continue to work unless the town decides to change it, and that's perfectly within their purview. The town owns or leases the space that the Y uses. We then pay the Y a management fee to provide services programming for the community. That management fee is capped at a certain amount. This year, I think it was capped at $144,000-ish. Any grants or revenue generated by the YMCA reduces that management agreement. The goal is to get to a point where the YMCA, we don't have to pay the YMCA anything in a management agreement because they generate enough fees, et cetera, to be sustainable without us paying that management fee, and we do believe that that's likely to happen with this additional space. And as far as the agreement is that the YMCA reduces our management agreement by whatever funds they bring in. So that's been that way. It will continue to be that way unless the select board changes it. I do want to make very clear that the select board can choose whether or not to enter into an extension of that agreement, and the select board will retain the ability and the power to set the rates. So what Bennington residents will be paying to be a member of the recreation facilities will be set by this board, not by the YMCA.
Dan, if I could raise one point of clarity.
Sure.
The question about ownership model, Hale versus the town, was raised, I think, to arrive at a conclusion that it is financially beneficial for users of the space and for taxpayers for the town not to own it.
Yes.
And I think we saw that in your presentation tonight.
Yes, thank you, Ed. So that, very good point. So we can leverage significant additional funding to build this project by having a public-private partnership, by having the Hales own it. And our cost, the cost to the taxpayers will be significantly lower using this model. So that's why we did that. And I just want to make it very clear, Hale Resources will be purchasing this property. The town will not be purchasing it and giving it to Hale Resources. That's not the deal. That's not what we project doing. So.
Great. Questions? Yes, Bruce. Three minutes, Bruce.
Bruce Lee Clark. My only question at the moment has to do with the current senior center building. We've spoken about it as being approximately $400,000, but that's really what I want to ask about. Who sets, or how does that amount get set? Who are the bargaining persons? In other words, who are the beneficiaries? My sense is that it's not Chris Gilbert, but I want to be clear in my own mind about who's doing the bargaining regarding the value of that particular property and trace where that money ends up going. I hope so.
Yeah. As we mentioned before, the deal with Chris Gilbert is that the purchase price for the building is $1.1 million plus the senior center. Now, we had a opinion of value based on comps done, and it was approximately, I think Brian Audi did the work for us. He's a local appraisal expert. He came in about $400,000, and we would not expect that number to change significantly, but that number, that $400,000 or whatever it happens to be based on an appraisal, a third-party appraisal, would then be credited to the town and used to help pay for the fit-up costs that the town is incurring. So the $8 million it will cost to fit up and build out the town space, we're offsetting very partially by $2 million and the value of the senior center. So we're in it about, and if you also include soft costs, we're in for a total amount, if you include the senior center, for $2.9 million for an $8 million project of just our space. And the other important thing, I think it's really, maybe we lose sight of the fact here that with that $2.9 million, we're leveraging a $28 million investment in our community and all the things that go with it, the housing and the recreational space and the Meals on Wheels, et cetera. So it's a small portion of the overall project funding, but it's essential, and our participation is absolutely necessary to make this project work.
Great. Yes, Ned.
Yeah, Ned Perkins. There's a house, maybe you can go to the parking slide, 652 Main Street, which is right on the corner of Pleasant, and it's really part of the same lot as the high school. I wonder if there's been any thought of purchasing that property and using it for parking, and if that's not practical, has there been any thought about how the town would interact with how the residents of the new property would interact with the residents of that property, which is rather problematic right now? Thank you.
John Hale from Hale Resources. I'll talk loud. We have not, we've talked about it amongst ourselves about that property, but have not approached the owner. But also, we've purchased property around that building, 323 Pleasant Street, 321 Pleasant Street. We have a purchase agreement for 319 Pleasant Street, which are all adjacent on Pleasant Street. We own a building, 332 Pleasant Street. So we've thought about property that's around this building, and you know, this is part of the reason why we're doing this project, is to try to change that end of that street. Yes, we see that building. It's something that we're looking at, but we have not discussed that with the owner or have even approached him at this point.
But it would be a lot more parking.
Totally agree, yes.
Anyone? Yes, please.
My name is Kathy Ohlmeyer. I live in Bennington. I'm going to apologize if my question has been brought up in previous meetings. I guess I have a lot of concerns about the safety of that area. I live in that area. I live right on Main Street. I hear, with or without windows shut, I hear fighting, I hear gunshots, much more than I'd like to. There's obvious drug use. They don't even try to hide it. I'm just wondering if there's going to be any safety concerns. First of all, the fact that you guys are planning all this for an empty building, I think is wonderful. I mean, as far as violence and safety, it's really going to make a big difference. But there's still a lot of stuff going on in that area. I don't know if you've talked even about hours, if this place is going to be open in the evenings. There'll be people living there in the evenings, so, but I am very concerned about the safety factor.
Thank you.
So obviously, safety is a legitimate issue, and as you mentioned, we do think just simply renovating and redeveloping this property will improve the neighborhood and reduce the likelihood of crime in that vicinity. But you know, you did mention that, and we definitely agree. And you did mention also that there will be folks living there 24/7, so there's going to be a lot more eyes on the street, a lot more folks there to make sure that that there are not issues. And we have put a very generous security system budget into the project, so we'll have lots and lots of cameras and lots of redundant security measures for the building itself. So we do think that will be helpful. And as far as hours of operation, you know, obviously the tenants will be in there all the time, and the senior center programs usually wrap up around, Shannon, when is the senior center done? Usually about 4 o'clock, so maybe 5 o'clock. The Y runs programs till about what time? Even up to 8 o'clock, yeah. And we are putting a whole new site lighting system in, so that will help improve it. But we think the number one way to improve this area of town is to make this investment in this 100,000 square foot vacant building that's been there for 20 plus years vacant. So we think that's the best way to improve security there. And we are very cognizant of that, and we're going to make every effort to make sure this is a very safe location for everybody, residents and users of the facility, other users. Zach.
I just want to mention too that this door right here will be the only door that's unlocked during the day and at night, and well, not even at night, but when the community center is open, and the rest of them will require a fob to access the building. And to put a little bit more emphasis on that neighborhood needing investment, from this side of the building, like from right here, all like 0.2 miles down the street, there's about 117 units that are in that area. To put that in perspective, I live on Maple Street, which is also 0.2 miles, and that has about 33 housing units on that street. So it's more than 3 times the amount of housing right there next to this. And I think it just goes to speak to, we have a lot of families, we have a lot of people living in this neighborhood, and so investing in that community is the only way that it's going to change. So.
So I'd like to add a little bit to that too. And you know, I've been doing this for 14 years, and you know, we've grown and done a lot on Pleasant Street. We just finished 219 Pleasant Street, December 2021, and we just feel as though this partnership is really going to help make a change in that street. And if we don't do stuff like this, it'll never change. So we teamed up with the town because we want to see that change too, and increase that safety and try to get control of our neighborhoods here. And I think this project is a perfect thing to do that. It's been sitting there for 20 years, unused. It's actually fueled the problem that this woman just talked about. So totally agree. This is why we're doing it. This is part of one of the major reasons. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Jean?
Yeah, obviously, we all need to be aware and concerned about safety, without a doubt. And everyone's talking about, you know, we think it will, you have more experience than anyone, but research proves that it's not just people wanting to do the right thing, it's research shows that doing these sorts of projects in these sorts of neighborhoods decreases violence and bad behavior and increases a sense of community and caring about each other because of the increased sets of eyes. When there's a lot of activity and people coming and going, bad things are less likely to happen, and that's just a fact. So I think we need to remember that.
Yes.
Shirley Adams, Bennington. Just a couple of questions. The daycare space, it was mentioned that the Y would administer that, and I'm just wondering if there's any other town involvement. We talked about the rent for the recreation space, and just a little clarity around that if there's any to provide. In earlier presentations, there was talk about the project being multi-phased, and I'm wondering if that's still the plan. They talked about the Meals on Wheels and the senior center and the residential area being first, and then the recreation, the gym and whatnot being a second phase. Has any of that changed? And then one other quick question, since we were talking about entrances. There was talk about the current entrance still being available. Will that be a general entrance, or is that just going to be like an emergency exit? Will all the entrance into the building be through the lobby area? Those are my questions.
So as far as the daycare space, definitively I can say that will be leased by the operator of that space, which is most likely the YMCA. It will not be leased by the town. That will be a direct lease between Hale Resources and the YMCA or other child care provider. Although we're very, very excited about that space, the town does not have any direct involvement in that space. But again, anybody who has children knows that child care is a big, big deal in this town and a huge need. Great question about the multi-phasing. That was initially our thought and how we might best accomplish this project. But now that we have such a great private partner in Hale Resources, the plan is to build this all out all at once in that 18 months that Zach mentioned. That would be complete from the beginning to end. Every single space in the entire property would be completed in that time period. So we do not anticipate phasing at this time. Because of the funding sources, I don't even believe we could phase it, because they're going to want the entire project to be done in order to dedicate the funding. So I don't expect anything but a get started, do the whole thing, and finish, and then occupy. As far as the current entrance is concerned, so the current entrance will primarily serve Meals on Wheels in the senior center. So those folks who want to access those facilities directly can go into the current primary entrance. It will not allow access to the recreational space from that entrance, but it will allow access to those senior programming spaces. The main entrance, which is being shifted, will enter into a lobby facility where folks can either go into Meals on Wheels or Senior Center or Rec Center. I would imagine people using the Rec Center, they're going to have to use that entrance, but folks accessing Senior Center and Meals on Wheels will probably use the other entrance most of the time because it's just more direct. And then there'll be yet another entrance, excuse me, for the child care facility and other entrances for the residential spaces. So that's kind of how that would work out. But again, that primary entrance will remain and will be primarily used by Meals on Wheels folks and the Senior Center folks.
Dan, can you address if that lobby will be staffed during the open hours?
Yes, the lobby will be staffed during all hours of operation for the Rec Center and the other facilities. It won't be staffed for residences, but it will be staffed for the users of the facility that don't live there. Thanks, Joe.
Any more new questions or first-time question askers? Yes, Deb, coming up.
Debbie Matt, Bennington. Is there going to be a designated fire lane somewhere here, or is that going to be on the street? And if I'm understanding right, it's going to be roughly 2 years for the Meals on Wheels and the rec and the Senior Center and the Y area. Is that separate from the time for the other part of the building, for the apartments? How, if it is, how long before those apartments will be up and running?
Thank you.
Jack, I'm going to have you answer the fire lane question. But I can answer as we mentioned before, this construction will happen all at once. All the residences and the town space it's projected to occur all at once, and it will then be occupied all at once. So it won't be phased, won't be like the Senior Center folks occupy before the residents or vice versa. It will all be completed at the same time, and then everyone will occupy the space after the construction is complete. Jack and Jeff, you could talk about fire lanes and fire code. I know that the town building inspector and fire marshal has reviewed the site plan and is comfortable with it, but maybe you can speak about details.
Thanks, Dan. Jack Byer with Goldstone Architecture. And as Dan pointed out, we did meet with Paul Dansereau and has looked at the site and is comfortable with the access for fire department vehicles. There is access to 3 sides of the building, which is significant and you know, more than enough to fight the fire and if there was one. And it's also a fully sprinklered building, so there is that additional safety, fire safety measure as well.
Thank you. Other first-time question askers? All right, we'll start with round 2. Nancy?
The ample convenient parking on site, the 65 spaces. When it was the middle school, parking was tough for everybody. You're saying there's 400 feet of parking on Main Street. That's a football field and a third. For seniors in the wintertime or anyone with children will have to be slipping and sliding on. What standards does the BCRC use to look at parking? Will M&S Development from Brattleboro be involved in any way with this project? What is the size of our current senior center upstairs compared to the one you're proposing at the Ben High? The public wasn't told last year that you're going to turn it into a Bennington County Senior Center at the Ben High. How many seniors from Bennington County will be going? Are you talking to seniors from New York State? They aren't going to be walking to Bennington. Again, where will they put their cars? And depending on how many you're inviting, it means our local seniors are going to have less space than they've had for the past 45 years. The $300,000 is going to cost our budget each year. Does that include the cost of the custodians you're going to have to hire to maintain that building, the 30%? What happens when something breaks or have to be replaced or repaired? Will that fall to the town budget in the 30%? If the Hales are going to own it, why is our town doing the parking lot and maintaining the outside? You want me to stop or keep going?
You've still got time. Keep going,
Okay.
please.
Why has there been no presentation for a breakdown of the cost for each section of the building? For example, what's the courtyard going to cost? What's the gym going to cost? We should see exactly how much is being spent, because for $28 million, this is why our town has never been involved in the past. The cost is too much to the budget, and to be telling us we're looking at least $300,000 a year, we can't afford this on top of everything else. The parking. And again, all of this talk for 2 years that you'd make sure seniors were going to be set. You've got 3 handicap spaces. It's going to be a free-for-all for everybody who gets there. It's going to be first come, first serve. Last year, town officials promised all the groups leases and told them how much their rent was going to be. About how many people are you expecting to be working there, say between 11 to 2?
Nancy,
If you're going to
30
have 40
seconds.
apartments, half of those people are going to have cars. I mean, this nonsense that there's plenty of parking, there isn't. I don't know, I mean, for $300,000 and the cost is only going to go up each year, we cannot afford the Ben High.
Okay, I think I got them all. Let's go through them. So as far as M&S involvement, there is no involvement from M&S. I do know that Craig Miskovich, who is a part of M&S, is an attorney that the Hales have hired, but it's not as M&S Development Corporation or company, correct? Yeah, so separately. Craig Miskovich is an expert on new market tax credits, which is why he's involved, as well as other tax credits. So as far as the parking is concerned, in the concern for senior centers access to parking, we have, as Shannon mentioned in the presentation, we're going to reserve at least 25 spaces in the front lot for seniors and other folks who want to access Meals on Wheels and the senior programs. That will be reserved for their use. We can certainly reserve more if it becomes necessary. Right now, they have 13 spaces, so this will almost double the amount of spaces they have now. So we're hopeful that will be sufficient, but if not, we can certainly increase that amount during the hours in which the senior center is operating. I think it's important to mention, and this is why you do a traffic or a parking needs assessment, you look at the peak time of use for all the users. So peak time of use for the senior center is going to be in the day, late morning to early afternoon. The peak time for the tenant, the residents, will be in the evening, so they won't overlap significantly. So that's why you can get a lot more mileage out of 65 spaces than it may appear to someone who hasn't seen all the details of when people are working, when people are occupying, et cetera. And we are certainly going to share that traffic study, Nancy. You can see that online later this week, and you'll see all the calculations that went into that. As far as the senior center space itself, we already mentioned that the senior center and Meals on Wheels space currently is about 5,000. It's actually a little less than 5,000, and it will be 14,000 square feet. So we did talk about that. As far as the space that's dedicated exclusively to the senior center space, that will be 30% bigger than their current space. So there's significant additional space. I will remind folks, though, because of the way this facility is going to be developed, there'll be an astronomical additional amount of space available for senior programming. In other words, the senior program is not going to happen exclusively within the senior center. It can happen in the Meals on Wheels cafeteria. It can happen in any one of the exercise rooms that the rec center, that will be in the recreational space. So the amount of activity space available for seniors will probably go up 4, 5, 6 times. Now, is it exclusively for their use? No, but the exclusive use is going up 30%. Let's see. I really don't know how to address the Bennington County Senior Center. I've never heard that term before. The senior center is currently open to anybody, regardless of what town they live in, and that's because the seniors.
Please, do not interrupt, please.
That's because the seniors who occupy the space and use the space said loud and clear to the town, we don't want you to charge people from out of town. We want them to participate in our programs. Could that change? It certainly could, and that would be up to the select board whether or not they want to charge folks that don't live in Bennington. But when that was being considered a couple years ago, we heard loud and clear from the current senior users, Bennington residents and folks that aren't from Bennington, that's not what they want. Again, decision for the select board. If you think that should be limited, that's going to be their decision. Right now, it is not. So as far as you asked about the labor costs, the additional labor costs for the operating costs, that is included in that number explicitly. If you look at the slide, you'll see that we have dedicated significant additional time for the 22,000 square feet additional space to be maintained. As far as maintenance of the building, as we mentioned in the presentation, Hale Resources will be responsible for all maintenance of the building except for the interior space that the town will occupy. In other words, we'll have to clean our spaces, we'll have to clean the restrooms, and Meals on Wheels will be responsible for their kitchen facilities, et cetera. But Hale Resources will be responsible as a landlord for any building type issues, like if there's a leak in the roof or there's a window broken or something like that. That's Hale Resources as a landlord, just like any other landlord would be responsible for the building that they lease. And as far as why, you asked why would the town do the outdoor maintenance of the facility, plowing, sanding, et cetera, mowing? Well, those costs have to be paid for somehow. So either the town has to pay for that cost for somebody else to do it for them, or we can do it on our own, our proportional cost. And today, it looks like because we already have the staff, we're already out plowing, we already have folks mowing, it looks like the cost to the town will be significantly less if our folks do it. If the numbers change and it looks like it'd be more cost effective to pay our proportional share of the maintenance, to pay somebody else to do it, then that's what we'll do. It's what we do what's best for the taxpayers. As far as a cost breakdown, I can tell you that Zach has a excruciatingly detailed cost estimate, and happy to share that. In fact, the slide that was shown to you with the many different columns breaks down every single space and how much it's going to cost to do. And that slide will be on here for you to review if you'd like to. It'll be online. Talked about parking for seniors and how much space we're going to reserve. And as far as how many people are working, I don't have those numbers off the top of my head. It will be in the parking study. We've checked with Meals on Wheels. We checked with okay. We checked with the rec center, and that'll all be online. And so we know all the staffing numbers. We know the numbers of tenants, and we know the number of folks that will be children that will be in the child care facility. All those things are programmed into this traffic analysis or this parking analysis. So those numbers will be available, and you'll be able to review them online once that report is published.
Dan, the one last point, that'd be great to go back to the slide that had the costs on it. Nancy has said, I think 3 times now, that we can't afford $300,000 a year. And I think this slide very clearly shows where those funding streams
so I think
from.
it's a very good point, and I should have mentioned that explicitly. So I would tend to agree with you that we couldn't afford $300,000 extra dollars a year, but $200,000 of that will be covered by additional revenues and by existing budget line items. So it's not appropriate to say it's going to cost us $300,000 extra. Could it conceivably, if the YMCA performs much less admirably than we think they will, that we could pay up to $88,000 in additional maintenance costs or operating costs? That's conceivable, although very unlikely given the track record of the YMCA. And if you guys know Kayla and Taylor, they are going to go great guns with that additional space and generate lots of extra revenue. We do not expect that 88,000 number to stay that high. We would expect it to decrease significantly, but that is the absolute worst case scenario for 22,000 additional square feet for the community to use for its own benefit, for the benefit of this community. It could cost up to $88,000 additional, not $300,000 additional per year.
Jonah, could you go back to this slide with the funding, the more detailed one? I just wanted to point out one thing that I might not have made clear, because this does say total funding, all sources here. And this is, the 10% in Vermont is really like the buffer. So anything we couldn't raise up here for funding towards the development cost went here. And this is the development cost too. So it was mentioned like, what was the cost of the gym? And that would be in this recreation, the auditorium, senior center. So this number down here is the cost of each one of these spaces, and also the amount of money that we have identified for that cost. So I just want to make sure that was very clear.
Thank you. It's amazing. Yes, Sam?
Sam Racino, Bennington, Vermont, once again. My question of thought would be the cross streets, the Union Street, Pleasant Street, Safford Street. Right now, this building is vacant and you don't see much traffic with Ben High. When this is back in operation, we're going to have a considerable amount of traffic in the visionary. When you're looking from pulling out of Stewart's and you're looking east, you've got clear tunnel vision. If you're going to allow vehicles to be parking on both sides, citizens around town are going to have to get used to a new traffic pattern, because our clear vision, we're going to have to adjust ourselves as far as traffic coming in and coming out. Seniors are pretty active early in the morning, 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. I don't know about you, but I've been around a few seniors. They're up at Adam. So there's a lot of interaction, early morning hours, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon when school gets out, buses stop, 4, 5 o'clock. So there's going to be a lot of interaction with those cross streets. So I'm just wondering if there's any studies on those cross streets. I know it's not possible right now, but when this gets back in operation, there was even talk about moving the traffic light from Safford Street to the crossroad of Union and Pleasant.
Thank you.
So the parking spaces we propose using, the public parking spaces are existing public parking. We're not creating new public parking spaces. They're already there and could be used at any time by anyone. And we don't anticipate, huge traffic increases, especially if you compare it to the previous use in that space, which was a middle school. This will be a significant reduction. And we did, the traffic functioned perfectly adequately when there was way more use than there would be on a daily basis than we expect here. But in any event, I would say that if we do have a traffic problem and we are that busy, we should feel really, really good about this town, because that means that we're making things happen here, and that's what we want to do.
Any other questions? We've got the whole team here, so now's the time. These questions have been great. Nancy?
I noticed on the plans it said 1.5 apartment. I've never heard that term, so maybe somebody could say what a 1.5 apartment is. Every year in the town report, you can look at a breakdown of each category in our budget. This year, the word senior was removed. You couldn't see how much we paid for the senior budget and senior building. Stu, I asked you why that category disappeared and you didn't know. It seems to me
Nancy,
like
that's not
already
true.
we can't see what we're paying for seniors.
I told you, Nancy, that the senior center budget was placed under the general category of recreation. It's still the same budget, it's still the same line items, it's still there, and it's still obvious.
The line said senior this year, or did you just drop it into recreation?
Recreation is the main title. It consists of the recreation budget, the senior center budget, and the senior center building.
But the line has always, they've always been 2 lines. This year, there was only 1.
It was put under recreation, Nancy. So, I mean, you have the answer. It's all under recreation, but the 3 categories for senior center
Okay.
are still there.
We're paying about 140.
But, yeah, ask your questions.
Okay. We're paying about $146,000 between the senior building and the senior center. So we should be seeing a big savings not having the senior building. Instead, our costs are going to go up. Are you still going to honor the leases that, didn't you say it could be $200,000 we'll be paying each year for the Ben High?
I think it'll be helpful for you to look at the slides when the.
Well, I saw
but
200.
Dan, you may want to go through this.
Well, I mean, you're throwing all these numbers out here. I think it needs to be clarified for the public. What are we talking about paying out of our budget each year? Is it $200,000?
If I can just say how I understood this, $200,000 has been identified from existing revenue sources. Our largest risk. Can you hear me now? Apologize. $200,000 has been identified from existing revenue sources. The biggest risk, the potential risk is $88,000 at most, and we expect that additional programming revenue for the Y will reduce our cost to the Y to match or possibly exceed that $88,000. Dan, is that correct?
And are the leases that the town officials promised the groups last year, are they going to charge them more? Are you staying with what you charged them for rent?
Are you speaking of Meals on Wheels?
Meals on Wheels and the other groups. Stu told me in the fall that the town was finishing up offering the groups leases, telling them what their rent was going to be. Also that their rent would only go up 1% to 2% a year. That needs to be clarified.
I can answer that question, or go ahead, Dan. You can.
So, Zach, maybe, I don't know what that 1.5 apartments means. Okay, why don't we answer that one first, because I don't know what that means.
So that's not on the plans currently. That was kind of an internal interim thought about some of the 2-bedroom units while we were working through on the second floor of the 1975 space. Our interior rooms, and they have skylights as opposed to windows on the exterior wall. And at the time, we were still working through code requirements related to bedrooms that are on the interior of a building that only have skylights rather than windows for fresh air and light, natural light. We since have concluded that those are acceptable as bedrooms and by code, and those are currently now identified as 2-bedroom units.
So Jack, just to be clear, that in the current plan, there are no 1.5.
There's nothing on the current plans that says 1.5 bedrooms. That was as I said, sort of an interim plan that kind of should have been removed before it was released.
Thanks, Jack. I just want to add to that. So that's these rooms right here, the interior ones that we're talking about. One of the challenges with this building is that it has such a large footprint, and it's really difficult to get these units in here. They're very deep here, and we don't have a lot of wall space. So having 2 bedrooms has been challenging. I think we only have like 2 or 3 without the 1.5s, right? Like actual, 3. So this is allowing us to add 5 more 2-bedroom apartments to this building, to this project, which is important because that means that kids can then live in this space, and that is one of our goals here. So that is why we're pursuing this. We've determined that it is code compliant. We're still working with funders to see if it is acceptable with them, and so The architects have determined we can do 2-bedroom apartments, but the funders might say we don't like that because they like to have the window on the wall and make it less institutional setting is the way they look at it. But just wanted to make sure that was also said.
I think the other question before we get to leases is it was mentioned that that we would see costs go down because we're not maintaining the current senior center anymore, but we're adding 22,000 square feet, so that's not a reasonable assumption. We will be taking the costs that we currently pay in maintenance for the senior center and applying it to this new facility. I think it's about $40,000 that will go towards this new facility. And then there's an additional on top of that we're talking about because we're adding 22,000 square feet. So we're nearly about more than 5 times more space than we have right now. And so that's why there's an additional maintenance cost associated with it. As far as the leases, I can tell you what I know. We have presented, and although it hasn't been signed yet, we have presented a lease to Meals on Wheels, which essentially mimics their current terms. Is that accurate, Stuart?
That's correct.
So although they have not signed it yet, we have no expectation of changing that. We would just simply continue leasing space to Meals on Wheels at a similar rate than we are now.
Even though their space increases.
Their space increases significantly. That's been a conscious decision by this board to support that very important community resource, and I think it makes a whole lot of sense. But that's a decision that was made by the board, and that we're going to follow through on that commitment. I think those were all the questions. I don't know if there's any. I don't know of any other leases that we have at the senior center currently. Do we, Stuart, have any other leases?
No, Meals on Wheels is the only lease.
That's what I thought. Okay.
What was the 146,000?
That's the current senior center budget.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions? Yes. Bill, come on up. Bill, this is time for questions. Have a question.
No, Bill Clark, town of Bennington, born and raised here. I just want to thank everybody with this project. I know it's a lot of mechanical parts moving together between the select board, the Hales, and everybody coming together, doing something with a building that's been sitting unempty for years and trying to make it into something and make our community better. I just want to say thank you to everybody.
Thank you. Lovely.
Jeannie, I had one more.
Yes.
We just got a survey results that came out last month about Vermont senior centers. And when you look at the usage of senior centers around the state, Bennington is on the very low, on the very low side of the number of people that come to the senior center. And I think we want that number to grow. We want to have the space for it, and I think that this is the kind of project that will allow that to happen, that can't happen now. The resources that are going to be there for the senior center at this building, the 14,000 square feet, is what we need for this project, for this community.
Thank you.
Yeah, so as a team, we were given the direction that this project really needs to fulfill the needs of seniors, and we need to make it possible to significantly grow our participation in senior programs. I say seniors, so I guess the official age limit is 50, right, Carrie? 50 and above? Senior center, yes. Yeah, so some of us don't feel like seniors yet that are over 50, but I guess maybe technically we are. So we definitely, and then obviously the other prime directive for us, if you want to call it that, is increasing opportunities for recreational space, and that cuts across all generations, young, middle-aged, and older. So we've done that with the 13,000 square feet proposed for the recreational space. So really, I will say thank you, Bill, but I will say that this project really just addresses so many needs and wants for this community, and the fact that we think we have a really good way forward to make this happen for the community. We're really excited about that. I will say, when the select board asked asked us, the staff, to put together a team and try to make this happen, I was truly incredulous. Like, how are we going to climb this mountain? But with Hale Resources and Goldstone Architecture, we're getting really close to the top, and as long as you guys keep telling us to go, we're going to keep going until we get it done. So thank you very much for your support, and we'll be back on the 22nd to
All
chat
right,
some
don't
more.
close out yet. I think Tom has.
I do too.
No?
I have
You're
one more
good?
comment. I have one more comment.
Well, Tom, you might as well. Jean has another comment, too. Go ahead.
A couple people have brought up that initially we said one thing and now we're saying something that's not quite that. Is it unusual in a project that size from conception to completion that things might change?
Absolutely not. So it's never exactly what you expect it to be, but the important thing is all the goals that we set out, the senior space, the recreation space, the housing, and even the childcare, which is kind of a dream we had, and now it looks like it's a distinct possibility. Those have not changed. The specific structure, the funding sources, we initially thought maybe the town would have to take on funding the construction and owning and operating the building. Luckily, we have a partner now that is well-versed in that and can take on that responsibility, and we can be a tenant and for the space that we actually want and that we need and want to use. So the answer is it's always very different from the beginning to the end, but what you want to keep in mind and what we have kept in mind is the goals that you guys set for us to accomplish with this project.
Thank you. Jean?
Yeah, I was sitting here thinking about all the impacts that this project could have, and I don't mean to put Rory on the spot here, but when you think of the implications, positive implications of health improvement, of families, of people of any age, I'm sure Rory can talk about that way better than I can. And the other thing I was thinking is, where we are today, I don't even think we can imagine the possibilities that will be available at this point. I can't even wrap my brain around all the wonderful things that could happen and will happen in the future. I mean, just what we know now is mind-boggling, and what's coming, I don't even think we can even imagine.
Lots and lots of possibilities with this building, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think you have a grateful community. This is great.
Thank you, Jean. I did want to just call out Rory from the Vermont Department of Health, the Bennington District Office, that we're working in partnership with them, that she approached Zach Hale and myself to do the first health impact assessment that's been done by the health department, really looking at the Ben High redevelopment. And so Rory and her team at the health department have been leading focus groups so far with seniors at the senior center, which was a wonderful meeting, kind of getting their input about the overall health, not just personally for them, but of the community and what their wishes are, as well as with teens and with tenants of the Hales specifically who live nearby on Pleasant Street and elsewhere. So I just think that's going to be a great piece of this project, to have that qualitative, data and storytelling kind of before and after, and Rory has been leading that.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been so wonderful. The work that you've done is incredible. We thank you so much for this, and we will see you back again on May 22nd for the next step, yes? Thank you. Thank you for all the questions. So we move on to the next agenda item, yes? Implementing the town vision, yes? Do you have a date for the listening session for the CPARP? Jonah does. CPARP, when is the listening session? Okay, do you want to say something about that? Okay, let's let anyone that needs to leave go ahead and go, and we will finish up the meeting. Okay, we're continuing the meeting now. Thank you.
Okay, great. I would just like to remind folks that at June 29th, right here in this room, the Community Police Advisory and Review Board, the CPARB, will be holding a listening session for the community to come express concerns, ask questions, very similar to the format here. I hope everyone can take the time to attend.
Say that date again.
June 29th.
June 29th. Okay, just because it was noisy. All right. Okay. Quick reminder, under implementing the town vision, boards and commissions, if you haven't applied for a board or commission yet, now is the time to do it. Right, the applications end on Monday, May 1st.
May 1st is the deadline, and we now have 8 individuals who are seeking appointment to one of 15 openings. So there
Okay.
are still openings available and still interest, I hope.
Great, okay, great, all right. Anything else under implementing town vision? All right, manager's report, please.
This will be very brief tonight. The only update I really have is the Willow Park playground update. It looks like the upper playground, which was really for the toddlers, may be ready and available by mid-May. Unfortunately, the larger playground will most likely be delayed somewhat. There are some additional deficiencies that have been discovered over the winter, but the original designers and the general contractor are committed to finishing the project, and they are on site and they've been in town over the last few days. So we're very, very hopeful, but it's going to take a little bit more time than we thought.
Sure, I can do just had an update today. I don't know if Paul talked to you
I didn't get
or
that one, no, go ahead.
So we might be a little bit more optimistic than that. We have a third-party inspector coming in to certify that all the equipment is installed appropriately and safe. We hope to have at least a verbal commitment by the end of the day tomorrow. Whether or not, how long it will take to actually get a written certification, I don't know. So we hope once we get that and we're satisfied with it, provided there's no unknown issues, we hope to be able to at least open the facility to the extent we can. We are still missing some swings and other equipment that didn't come in when it was supposed to, and the playground manufacturer is trying to get that to us as soon as possible. So we are hoping, and dare I say that as early, don't call me to this, but as early as next week, we may be able to open it to the extent that the equipment is completed. So definitely, hopefully earlier than mid-May, but we'll see. And again, we are waiting for those swing parts, and so there may not be the swings there, but everything else we hope will be ready and available for folks next week. But again, we have to wait for that third-party certification. We don't want anybody to go on there until it's certified as completely safe. And that's just part of playground construction, just have to have that. So that's the latest that I got today. So it could change tomorrow. But.
Okay. We don't take questions on manager's report.
In the comments that I was going to make it's an agenda item. Point of question.
No, I'm sorry, we
Point
don't.
of question. It's on the agenda item. I'm going to ask a question.
On what?
Willow Park.
I guess you are.
Sam Rustino, Bennington, Vermont. Point of question. It occurs to me that in the past meetings when there was the punch list for Willow Park that had to be done by the developer or by the planner or installer, whatever, there was to be no additional work from the town of Bennington. Buildings, grounds whatsoever. I've seen a picture on the front banner of buildings and grounds doing work at Willow Park, and also reading reports of additional work. How much additional work was done by town workers?
On the actual playground itself, none. Obviously, we have our staff up there. We're getting ready for opening of the park itself. So our people are up there. They're working in and around the facility, but they're not doing any work per se that is required by the contract and the contractor.
Our buildings and grounds folks did do some grading and tamping work for the new curbing that's around the exercise area. So that was something that we did just to facilitate the process because the curbing company needed that done. So that was something that we did do to move this project along. It wasn't on the playground per se, but there was an additional area of curbing that we added around the exercise area, and for that we did tamp down the area and prep it for the curbing.
Just to be clear, that was additional curbing that wasn't included in the initial cost estimate, so we felt like that was an amenity we wanted to have, so the playground company actually agreed to pay for the curbing if we'd create the conditions for it. So that was, we didn't have to pay anything extra, and we got an extra amenity that we didn't expect to get. So that's the only thing. And I will say that the town has not and will not pay any additional amount than what we agreed to in the contract, and we still retain a significant amount of funds to ensure that the project is done to our complete and total satisfaction. We have no expectation that that won't happen, but we definitely have the funds necessary to ensure that it does. But again, we're hoping next week people can start using it.
Great.
And
All
I have
right,
one-
upcoming agendas.
Hold on, one last thing.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, sorry.
Hydrant flushing begins this week and runs through May 5th. So if you find in your neighborhood, when we flush the hydrant, your water is running dirty, run the cold water only until it clears. Do not use your hot water because you will drag that sediment into your hot water tank, and that is not a good thing to do. Thank you.
Is there any update on when County Street will be paved?
No.
No.
Any other questions for the manager? All right. All right, upcoming agendas. So May 8th, we know we're bringing back proposed change in speed limit on East Road and the extension of the snow ban and with no, whatever, diagonal parking. And we also are bringing forward a policy on revolving loans, yes? And then May 22nd, we know EMS proclamation is coming our way, and also Ben High project will be back. Yeah, to talk about development negotiating a development agreement. And we probably will be announcing boards and commissions on the 22nd. So we will be doing interviews prior to that.
Yeah, we'll begin that process, first two meetings in May. We'll most likely have interviews scheduled for you folks.
Yeah, so we should be able to hopefully know who's on the boards and commissions. Anything else?
The only tentative one is Chelsea Solar may be with us on June 12th.
Oh, okay. All right, that seems enough. All right, so other business. Anything?
Officially, it's Green Up Day on May 6th. You can go to the town office and pick up bags to pick up garbage. I say this every year, I think. I wish we didn't need Green Up Day and people didn't litter, but they do, so now we have to pick it up. So, thanks.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Sarah? No. Ed? No. Me either. Oh, sure.
Share something really quick from Kayla Becker, our Bennington branch director for the YMCA. Couldn't make it tonight for public comment, so she just wanted to share that this Saturday from 12 to 3 p.m. at the Bennington Community Recreation Center is Healthy Kids Day. There's going to be delicious grilled burgers and hot dogs from Maureen O'Neill of the Abbey Group, free. The whole event is free and open to the public. Giveaways, resources for children and families, music, and all the local community partners.
Great, thank you. All right, with that happy note, do I have a motion to adjourn? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay, thank you all.
Cat TV is celebrating 30 years of community media. Help support Cat TV's next 30 years by becoming a member today. Your membership will help us continue covering meaningful, local content. Thank you for supporting your local community media station.